Award-winning producer, Frank Pace, and retired New York City firefighter, 9/11 first responder, and Vietnam vet, Billy O'Connor. Brought to you by We Can Coffee Company, manufacturer of freshly roasted premium coffee blends delivered directly to your door. This week's guest, the most accomplished female broadcaster of all time and member of Professional Football Hall of Fame, Lesley Visser.
My brother,
Frank, how you doing, pal? You playing any golf? How's your waggle? How's everything going?
my waggle's fine. I'm really excited today. We got a great guest. Who's our guest, Billy?
Lesley Visser. I'm excited as well. I mean, this is she's some groundbreaker. Unbelievable. I mean, only woman in the Hall of Fame, the NFL Hall of Fame.
For sure.
Yeah,
For sure.
amazing how many glass ceilings she broke.
She broke a bunch of them, that's for sure. So she'll be on with us in a little while. What do you want to talk about?
I don't know. It's your world. I'm just living in it. Whatever you think. No good news on the COVID front. I'm looking at that all over Louisiana and Florida. Grief, but I don't want to talk about grief. I can't even watch the news anymore. There's so much garbage.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Why don't you read a passage from our book?
Hey, there's an idea. You know what?
What?
I'll pick one at random. Because I don't want to do anything rehearsed, Frank. I'll just pick this one at random. Well, here's a bookmark, instantly enough. All right. There's a reporter talking to Lenny Dawson, who was the Kansas City quarterback.
Well, he wasn't a Kansas City quarterback then. He was the Dallas Texans quarterback then. If you remember the book, you Egypt.
What's Italian for Egypt?
Mook.
Exactly. He was the Dallas Texans quarterback, and Lamar had to move to Kansas City because Dallas just wasn't drawing.
Yeah.
And so an Eagle reporter interviewed Lamar's quarterback, who was Lenny Dawson, later that week.
And what did he say, pray tell?
He said, Lenny, oddly enough, would you comment on the rumor that Mr. Hunt is moving the team to Kansas City? He's, well, I don't know much to say about it. He said, my contract doesn't specify where I play. It specifies who I play for. So the reporter says, is Mr. Hunt moving the club to Kansas City, Missouri, or Kansas City, Kansas? And Dawson stopped signing autographs and stared at the reporter. Wait a minute. There's two Kansas City? Yeah, there's so many quotes in this book that are funny, and they're all public record. I mean, because the characters are so,
well, they're not all public record, because we made up a couple of them. We made up the bedroom scenes, but Lin-Manuel Miranda made up all sorts of scenes in Hamilton, the musical, that I'm sure that Hamilton had no blacks in the 1700s and 1800s. So,
well, that's for sure. But I mean, the dialogue, we made up some of the dialogue, but any of the quotes, they're pretty much public. And the people large in life, Ali, Frank Sinatra, Toots Shaw, they were Cosell.
Bigger than life.
Bigger than life.
And by the way, Lesley probably knows all of them. Lesley Visser probably knows all of them. She certainly knows Cosell. She certainly knows.
Well, I tell you, I read a book, and Lesley Visser, sometimes you have to cross when it says don't walk. And it's a fine read, Frank. It's a really, really good read. If you like sports, it's almost required reading. Like Lamar's Gamble would be if you like sports. I think it's required reading.
So the NFL opens up the exhibition game. Did you happen to see the Field of Dreams game? It was on TV.
I heard it was a super baseball game.
It was a super baseball game. It was the biggest baseball viewing audience had in 16 years. It did a 5.9.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, it did a 5.9. NFL Hall of Fame football game did a 7.3. And 5.9 was the biggest broadcast. So
and you're talking about exhibition football. And it was a ridiculous game. I mean, it was like who's pitching. There was no scoring in the game, and it was a real low-scoring game. As a matter of fact, the last couple of games.
The over and under was 31, right? What'd you bet? What'd you bet?
I would have bet the under. I made a mind bet, Frank. This way, all I could lose was my mind. I didn't want to put cash on it. You know what I mean? I'm not doing that no more. Just my mind. There's nothing.
Hey, tell me that before we get into that. Tell me how your Bitcoin did this week.
Hey, I got out of it, first of all.
Yeah,
I got
you got
out of it. As soon as I got out of it, it went up 25%, and I started, I said, unbelievable. But then it went down about 10%, so I got back in. And by God, this week it's up 45%. It's up to 222.
You're back in now?
Yeah. I got back in. It's up to $2.22. And you know what? I'm starting to think, let me tell you how sick I am. I'm starting to think is, we had a lot of views last week, and I was mentioning Cardano, and I'm thinking, I wonder if I'm influencing the stock, if people are stupid enough to be listening to me, because I know nothing,
If you're stupid enough to listen to yourself, you will believe that you're influencing the stock.
I'm saying, what if people are listening to me, and they've been buying this stock? But yeah, it's up like 55% this week, 222, and head north. I mean, just a matter of time. And I want to tell you, Frank, right up front, if this stock goes through the roof and I make a lot of money, success is not going to change me. I was just talking to the guy who brushes my teeth this morning. And I'm the same humble guy. You know what I mean, Frank?
Yeah, I got to get out of this conversation. Before we bring on this week's guest, Lesley Visser, I'm pleased to announce our sponsor, Weekend Coffee. They have got great freshly roasted premium blends, which, by the way, they deliver straight to your door. So Weekend Coffee is a great sponsor, and we're happy to have them, and we're going to be doing great things with them as we approach September 11th.
Well, September 11th, as a first responder at 9/11 and a veteran myself, Weekend Coffee, every 10 packages they sell, they donate a bag of coffee to a veteran or to a first responder, which is pretty cool stuff.
That's great.
The philanthropic arm is out there. So we're proud to push that coffee.
You betcha. Speaking of September 11th, why don't we bring on Lesley Visser? Hey, there she is.
Lesley Visser.
Lesley Visser, how are you?
Well, I'm not sure. Is this what my career has come to?
That's what Frank said when he met me.
That's exactly what I said when I met Billy. Is this what my career has come to?
Well, Lesley, I'm Billy O'Connor.
And that's Derek Harris, right?
Yeah, it's Harris today.
Actually, I got to ask you a question right off the bat. My full name is William Patrick Michael O'Connor, and I was born in County Cork, Ireland. And when I read your terrific book, sometimes you have to cross what it says, don't walk. One of the pictures in there is you and Art Rooney in Ireland. And my question to you is, do you still know all the lyrics to Four Green Fields?
No, but I love By the Fields of Athenry. Can you sing that?
Oh, that's a great song.
Can you sing
By a lonely prison wall, I heard a young... Everybody's supposed to join
My
in.
voice is terrible.
Hey, is this where my career has come to?
You can't sing any Irish songs, you're out.
Yeah, but my mom was from County Cork. We're the Rebel City. Did you know that,
That's
Billy?
where I was born, the Rebel City, up Cork. The big, there's a county in Ireland, Frank, called Down. And in all the hurling matches, everybody says up Galway, up Cork. And of course, somebody, up, down, up, down. I've been confused over there.
Before we get too far into this, I want to just say that we're so honored to have you here. You're one of the great sportscasters of all time, male or female. You're in a lot of Hall of Fames. You're in the NFL Hall of Fame, Sportscaster Hall of Fame. You broke the ceiling for women everywhere. And it's just an honor to have you.
It's great to be with you guys. And I can't decide which of your books I enjoyed more because I'm most associated with the NFL. The book on Lamar is just fantastic. But all the gossip that's in If These Lips Could Talk, or do you think you made up most of the stuff in If These Lips Could Talk?
I can tell you unequivocally that I left out a lot of good stuff in there. That'll be in my sequel. These Lips Did Talk. But before we go further, Derek, you have a picture. I want to ask you, as a member of the NFL Hall of Fame, what were they thinking with Peyton Manning's bust?
Oh, everyone complains about those always.
You see the picture we have up there?
No, I don't.
Oh, Derek is...
Well, I don't know if you'd appreciate that.
If you look quick, it looks like him.
If you look quick, it looks like him.
You guys kind of stepped on the punchline there. Yeah, but that's funny. But everyone always complains. I will tell you, it was so astonishing. I got a call when I got the call from the Hall of Fame, and it's not something, I guess some people campaign for it, but it was so far from ever thinking that I could possibly be qualified and to be the first woman. And they called me up, and all I remember saying is, okay, you can't take it back. Don't say you have the wrong number. Is this the right place? Because I was so astonished. The first game I ever saw was in Fenway Park. Remember when the Patriots played in Fenway Park, or maybe you don't remember, but
Babe Parilli, the quarterback?
Yes, he was, and it was Larry Eisenhower and Houston Antoine, and I mean it was a scream. And they had Ron Burton from Northwestern. He was like their only star.
Jim
but
Nance?
It was the ragtag AFL that you guys have written about, and because they didn't have a field, Billy Sullivan was one of those old gamblers with. You mentioned Mr. Rooney and Wellington Mara, and so they didn't have a field, and so they were like vagabonds. They played at Boston College, they played at Harvard, and they played at Fenway Park, which was BU. Or no, when they played at BU, they also had to play on Friday nights because they had the blue laws, and you couldn't play on Sunday on a college campus. So they moved to Friday night, and the game that I saw them was against the Raiders in '64 in Fenway Park at night.
Well, yeah, night games.
Babe told me at one time, because Babe was our coach in the WFL I worked in the WFL with the Chicago Winds, and Babe was our coach for 2 games. He got fired after 2 exhibition losses. So, and he was replaced by Abe Gibran, of course. But Babe and I got really close, and we stayed friends up until he passed away a year or 2 ago. But he told me they were in such dire straits that they would used to get on the bus for practice and not knowing where they would practice, because they would drive around until they found a field, and then when they found a field, they would all get out and then they would run practice. It's amazing.
It was really, I was a born, bred, and bled Red Sox fan, and the Patriots were just considered, right, 1960. I guess I was 6 years old, and, we didn't consider them. It was, of course, we waited for the Kurt Gowdy, Al DeRogatis Giants broadcast. But the Patriots were they were like a carnival. You're right, they ended up practicing in a field next to Logan Airport, and then you couldn't hear anything when the planes were going overhead. And Billy Sullivan told them not to turn the covers down on the bed because that would on the road because that would cost an extra $10. Sometimes they'd fly in the day of a game, to play against Buffalo. So it was really wild, and it wasn't that long after that I got to cover the NFL.
Wow, you started with the AFL then. That's what I used to go to the night games in the Polo Grounds to see the Titans on Saturday night, and I think Harry Wisman was worse. He was in worse shape than Billy Sullivan when it came to money.
Yeah,
they were really running.
They used to call the box office and they said, "We got a Titans game." A guy said, "What time's the Titans game today?" And they said, "What time can you make it?"
Well, I even at that Patriots Raiders, it was so much fun because, as you guys know, the AFL ball was slimmer than the Duke, and it had that little foam padding in it. So, that ball would just sail through the air. And this was Cotton Davidson against Babe Parilli and Gino Capoletti. And it was so much fun. It ended up in a tie, 43-43, everything the AFL. As you guys wrote in your book, they threatened the NFL with their high-powered offense. But basically, there was, nobody there at the game. I got to my first sideline. I went down and stood next to Jim Otto.
Wow.
Double O.
That's right. We've had so many.
Billy had the under in that game, 43-43.
Probably.
Billy had the under.
That would be my style, Frank. I think I really did have the under in the New Orleans, in the LSU game that went to like 4 overtimes. It was the most points ever scored in the college game. I definitely had the under in that. And I had the wrong side of the Immaculate Reception, too. I always remember that. Look at this guy running. He ain't going nowhere.
Billy, did you bet on like the synchronized swimming in the Olympics? Did you have the Russians?
I used to bet on fishing. I had a real problem, Lesley. A real problem. But I always went back when I had the good information on fishing, only if I had a tip.
So, Lesley, you were born and bred in Boston. You grew up a big Sam Jones fan?
He was. Matter of fact, I don't know if you can see this picture right here.
Wow.
That's last year with Sam. I started when I was 10 years old on Halloween. I would dress up as Sam Jones, which just shows you how you have to learn color. You know, I don't think I could have told you he was black. He was Mr. Clutch. I tried to learn the bank shot, and I would write number 24 on my little white T-shirt every Halloween. And now I've had the privilege, I know him pretty well. And every year Sam's in his 80s. And every year Sam calls me and he says, Lesley, please don't dress up. Really? You're in your 60s. I mean, come on. And I say, too bad.
Well, Sam's a good friend of Artis Gilmore, my friend Artis Gilmore in Jacksonville. And Sam lives in St. Augustine now. And Artis always keeps me up to date on what Sam's doing and how he's doing. And
you know what was interesting? Yeah, Artis is fantastic. I got to go up there and interview him for, did you see the show on ESPN, Basketball, A Love Story?
Yes,
which
I
was
did.
just terrific.
I did.
And so I had about 5 of those interviews, and one of them was Artis. And gosh, I can't believe you knew him well. He's really a gentleman.
Yeah, I've known him since 1969. 1970 at Jacksonville because I was a student at Jacksonville University, and that's.
Do you remember Drayton Miller, the assistant?
I do remember Drayton Miller.
Oh my gosh, Drayton Miller came to Boston College where I went as Zuffalato's assistant, and I don't know what kind of players we got with Drayton, but
or how you got.
I don't
them.
know.
Or how you got them,
right?
Because Drayton was a little bit. You know,
a little fugazi.
He was a little fugazi. He had an open wallet policy even back then.
You know, I have found though that college basketball coaches, for me, are just about the most interesting people in sports. I don't know, they've got an irony to them, and they all have a sense of humor, especially the New York, the East Coast guys. But I've learned so much from a few coaches. Bill Walsh, of course, Bill Walsh studied Muhammad Ali. He coached his team from learning from Muhammad Ali's moves and his quickness and his thinking. And then I got to travel John Madden's bus with him for 5 years, which you could imagine was a trip.
Wow.
Why don't you tell us a little about Ali?
Ali, I only got to, he was sort of failing when I got to talk to him, although he did name me a Muhammad Ali Daughter of Greatness, which was a pretty cool thing. And I got the award in Louisville. But it was that his mindset, Bill Walsh was an amateur boxer, which most people didn't know about him. And he just loved the idea of the quick strike, which of course the West Coast offense was a quick strike.
Right.
And he just said that, I don't think he ever got to spar or anything with Ali, but he did come to know him.
Yeah, because even late in his life, Ali came alive when he started sparring.
Lesley said, actually, of all the people she's met, all the fantastic celebrities and sports athletes, the 3 people she said they really sucked the air out of the room. One was Ali, one was Jordan, and what surprised me, the third one, Dan Marino.
Dan Marino, he tilts the room. Like you feel him before you see him.
Wow.
And he just has, 6'4". His first name's Constantine. Most people don't know that. Wow. It's not Daniel. Yeah. So, and he just has such a presence. And the saddest thing, I think, is that he didn't win a Super Bowl. I mean, even John Madden used to say that when he was at practice and he would see Dan throw the ball, that it would give John chills.
Wow. I remember Shula saying, they asked Shula one time, how come they're throwing the ball so much? He never threw the ball that much before Miami, and he said, I never had Dan Marino before.
Yeah. And
or since.
or since. And ironically, Dan Marino went to the Super Bowl his first year, and he lost that year, and then he never went back. Talk about so many things. So many things have to break your way to win a championship. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been that Patrick Mahomes went to one and we didn't see him again. I mean, it's just, you need so many elements in order to get there. And, Dan just gave his body. I'll tell you, are we off the record? Nobody will see this.
Nobody will see this.
I'll tell,
except, yeah.
Is that for sure?
Yeah. I'm wait, I'm sure nobody will see this, Billy.
So, Dan I was on the NFL Today 3 different times, so 3 different groups. And one time it was Dan Marino, Boomer Esiason, Deion Sanders, and myself. And we used to go to dinner the night after the show ended, all the football was over, we go to dinner. And we got talking about how Alvin Harper, I think, was the first player to dunk over the crossbar. It was a Cowboy 49er NFC Championship. So we were all talking, and Deion was saying, and I think Shannon Sharp was there too. And Deion and Shannon were saying, of course they could, they could do that. And I said to Dan Marino, who, by the way, you guys know him, he's Pittsburgh real. He's not boastful. He's just real. And I said to Dan, could you dunk? And he said, yeah, I could dunk. And I said, oh, come on, because, Dan had that Achilles problem, and we didn't see him get too far off the ground. I said, oh, come on, Dan, really? You could dunk? And he leaned over to me and he said, Lesley, I'm Dan Marino. Of course, he was drafted in 3 sports.
Wow.
So let me ask you a question, because I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. Wilt or Bill Russell?
Is that rhetorical? Is that a question?
Yeah, who is better? That's what I expected. I expected that.
It's so not even close. One is the greatest champion in the history of American sports, and the other one title?
So you don't think?
Yeah, individually, maybe he won 2. Individually, of course you'd pick Wilt on your pickup team if that's what you're doing, as you would, you might take Jabbar before you take Russell, or you might take, well, maybe not Walton, but it's just so ridiculous. Russell changed the game, right? He controlled the rebound to the outlet, and he ran out of fingers for his rings, right? Back-to-back college,
he did
Olympic
run out
gold.
of fingers.
You are from Boston, though, and you did follow those great Celtic teams, so you might be a little prejudiced.
Okay, well, here's another one.
Well, make the argument.
My argument would be that Wilt has like 25 or 30 individual records, which is pretty remarkable. I think Michael Jordan only has 5. 30 individual records, 100 points. He averaged what? One year he averaged 45 points and 25 rebounds. That's pretty remarkable. But again, they can make a case for Russell. What do I know?
I let her into that question because my friend Gil Vieira is from Boston. We have this argument all the time. So let me get into this because we're talking about Boston. Who's the greatest hitter you ever saw?
These are joke questions. I mean, really, I grew up with number 9. I grew up with Bill Russell, and I grew up with number 4, Bobby Orr. Anyone who doesn't think that Ted Williams is the greatest hitter who ever lived, just sit at another table.
Give us that Updike quote. I love that Updike quote that I read in the book when somebody wrote a fan letter to Ted Williams.
Gods don't answer letters.
Gods don't answer letters. He was complaining that he didn't get a letter back, and Updike said, Gods don't answer letters.
So let me ask you another question. Who's the greatest quarterback of all times?
Well, that's interesting. It's obviously Brady, except
so we're 4 for 4 on Boston. But go ahead.
Can I help it that it's the greatest sports? It is, but no. I will say this: that John Madden always used to get really red in the face because he felt it was Otto Graham, which people just forgot. But 10 titles.
Wow. Yeah, and who remembers Otto Graham? I mean, there's nobody around.
Mrs. Graham.
Mrs. Graham. Hopefully.
Okay, now I'll ask you one more thing. Who is the greatest Olympic bobsletter?
Outside of yourself.
No, that's what I was.
I got it for you guys. I brought it out.
And I would be really remiss if I didn't mention I saw it.
It was wild. It was the Olympic Games in Albertville. And Herschel Walker was on the team. Remember when Herschel got invited? And so he was on the team, and he said to me, Lesley, why don't you come down the track with the Olympic team? And I thought, okay, what a way to go. So they had to get permission from Jean-Claude Killy. He had to write a release. And I was the 3rd man in the 4-man bob, and I just kept my head down. They'd never let women go down it before because they didn't think our trap muscles were strong enough that the G-forces, would whip your head back. So it was all on me. They had no responsibility. and CBS put it on the air. It was like I couldn't believe that a minute could last for an hour. It just went on and on. And Sean McDonough, our great friend, Sean McDonough was on the call, and all you heard Sean saying was, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, keep your head down."
How fast did they go? How fast were you traveling? Do you know, miles per hour?
No, I don't know that. It's in the 60s, 70s. I'm not sure. It's.
But you got banged up pretty good.
It's a tin. Maybe it's even in the 80s. It's a tin can, and it's on ice. No, it must be so much faster. I
think it's 100. I think it's 100.
I do. I don't even know that. But you know what? All I could think of is remember that Bob Seger song, I wish I didn't know now what I didn't know then.
You got banged up pretty good, huh? It's like a bullet, almost like you're in a bullet.
Close to 100.
Yeah.
It's 93.
It must be even 120. I have no idea. And I was all bruised
Derek said
after it.
Derek said it's 93 miles an hour as the average.
Thank you.
So 93 miles an hour in a tin can. No wonder you were bruised.
I was. My legs looked like bad fruit. Crazy.
So, can you tell us a little about the rivalry between Pete Rozelle and Al Davis?
Well, of course, you guys wrote about it. You did such a great job. But it was, as you know, Pete Rozelle was like the 50th choice, right? It was just kind of, they were arguing. They couldn't pick the next commissioner. And, someone said, well, how about that guy, that young GM? And they said, okay. And I think didn't Al Davis kind of help to broker it? But, Al Davis, by the way, where was Al Davis born?
Brooklyn.
I know. That would be Brockton, Massachusetts.
He went to high school at Erasmus Hall, right?
Yes,
in Brooklyn?
He did.
And
with Barbara Streisand.
I know. And did he have, we debate, we found it someplace, but we found that Al Davis had an IQ higher than Bobby Fischer, who also went to Erasmus Hall High School. Is that true?
Al Davis was terrifyingly smart. I was really fortunate because his best friend was Will McDonough, the great Will McDonough from the Globe. And matter of fact, the reason I was the first woman to cover the NFL as a beat, and the reason I got to do it, I was a young kid at the Globe, and Will McDonough called Billy Sullivan, and he said, "Billy, we're going to have a woman on the beat, and that's that. Click."
Wow.
So Will was great friends with Al Davis, and so Al, who, as you know, didn't enjoy the company of a lot of people, but I got to know him pretty well before he died. So it was a real privilege. He saw things, he saw the cat in the picture. He knew that the AFL, remember, he was the first guy to, first they paid more money to the rookies, right? They paid, which you guys wrote about. And then he sort of invented the hand holding, didn't he? Where you'd sort of wrap up a guy so that no one else could get him.
Babysitting. Babysitting, which our good friend Upton Bell was an NFL babysitter when he was with Carol Rosenblum's Rams in the early 60s.
Isn't Upton a trip? I mean, he is so much fun. Like if you're going to have an ideal dinner table, I'd take, I might take Doris Kearns Goodwin, but Upton would be one of them.
Doris Kearns Goodwin, that's an interesting choice.
That's a great choice. Will McDonough, you had mentioned in your book that he could actually scream at Pete Rozelle on one phone and scream at Al Davis at the other, but his personality was so strong and such it must have been an unbelievable guy to know because Al Davis actually cried at his funeral.
He did, but just to tell you about Will McDonough, I mean, a couple things.
Please.
He was from Southie. He grew up with Whitey Bulger, and we are pretty sure that at Will's funeral, Billy Bulger, who was the president of Boston University and then of the Massachusetts Senate, so Billy Bulger was a pallbearer, and we are sure that Whitey was in the back in disguise, that he came to Will's funeral. I mean,
well, that would make sense.
Will had gone to visit Whitey when he was in Leavenworth, and Will kept everybody's secret. And he just, he knew everybody. Everybody respected him. And remember back then we all had Rolodexes?
Sure.
So
I got two in my office right now.
Yeah, well, they were the best. And so when Will would go home from the Boston Globe, all of us would dive under his desk to rifle through his Rolodex.
Wow. What a
No,
force,
he was
what a
yeah, he
personality,
was a
what a
treasure.
force.
What was the first game you covered for the network on the NFL?
Well, for the I did all the Patriots preseason. I did the Patriots as a beat for the Boston Globe.
Right.
And then when I got to CBS, we were the NFC then, and it was all the NFC East, were great. It was the 49ers and the Cowboys and the Giants and the Eagles and the Redskins. So, it was really a blast then. The whole NFL was great. And CBS made me, in 1992, CBS made me I had the privilege. I'm the only woman who's ever presented the Lombardi Trophy. And I was so nervous. It was when the Redskins beat Buffalo,
Right.
one of those poor Buffalo runs there in the middle of their four. And I remember I was just so nervous, and I had to present it to Jack Kent Cooke, the owner of the Redskins. And, one thing you learn early in TV is don't give up the mic. But I did, right? Mr. Cook took it from me. And so it goes to 150 countries around the world. And all you heard, because Jack Kent Cooke was talking about how he sold Encyclopedia Britannica in Canada, and he owned the Chrysler Building and the Forum. And all you heard was the producer, Bob Stenner, yelling for all the world to hear, "Get the effing mic out of Jack Kent Cooke's hands."
Tell me, when you worked with the Boston Globe, that movie Spotlight, do you think that was fairly accurate? Were their investigative journalism team that terrific at the Boston Globe?
I do, and I really lament it. When I was at the Globe was when the Spotlight started, but and I went to Boston College, so, a Jesuit education is a great thing, but the whole event started in Boston, and of course it revealed it around the world. But no, that Spotlight team is completely independent of the paper. They only take editorial advice from each other, and they present the product at the end. And it's a little bit the famous editor of the Boston Globe when I was there was a guy, Tom Winship, and his roommate at Harvard had been Ben Bradley.
Wow.
So our newsroom looked just like All the President's Men. They were great friends, Bill Bradley and Tom Winship. And so I sort of grew up in that All the President's Men ethic.
You said Bill Bradley. That's the same name.
Ben Bradley.
But yeah, she said I think she said Bill Bradley, which leads me to the New York Knicks.
Oh, of course. Sorry.
Yeah.
Confusing my Bradleys.
Yes,
yeah.
that leads me to the New York Knicks. And Bill Bradley's a great guy. You've met him, I'm sure. Senator Bradley?
I did. Of course it was Ben Bradley, who was Winship's roommate. But, another Ivy Leaguer, Bill Bradley. One time I asked him, who is harder to please, the fans or your constituents?
Well,
and he said, that's really hard. But Bill Bradley said one of the greatest things that I've ever heard. He said, the locker room is the ultimate laboratory. Because, look at that team. DeBusschere was the son of a saloon owner. Bill Bradley was middle class from Missouri. One guy was from the South, one guy Eastern Illinois. Willis Reed, another. So I think, I think he was right that the locker room crosses a lot of rivers.
Yep. I got fairly close with Bill back in the early 90s, and he invited us to DC. And so we went, my wife and I, my little daughter, who was 7 years old. So he was nice enough to let us spend some time with him in his office. And it was the time he was thinking about running for president. And of course, my 7-year-old daughter says, "Are you going to run for president?"
Good. Frank, tell me where sports was for you growing up.
Oh, it was everything. Sports and television were my life. I watched
What teams?
the Yankees in the 50s. Well, you have to win championships if you're going to play sports. So
whoa,
the Yankees,
and that would be why Bill Russell is de facto better than Wilt Chamberlain.
I got it.
You got an argument. You can make an argument.
I got it. They're lucky they were both on this. We're both. Nobody ever swung a trade for Russell for Chamberlain. So if that, my feeling is that anybody ever made the trade, Wilt would have 10 championships and Russell would have 2. But that's a story for another day.
But tell me about, when you grew up, were the Dodgers still there? Were the Giants in the Polo Grounds?
Yeah.
I mean, what was the baseball scene when you grew up?
Mickey, Willie, and the Duke. And I was in 57, the Dodgers and the Giants moved. So I never went to Ebbets Field, but I went to the Polo Grounds once. And I told this last week, I believe. I went to the Polo Grounds once. Al Dark hit 2 home runs in 4 innings. He hit 2 home runs, and the game got rained out, and Al Dark lost those 2 home runs. But
well, baseball in New York. That must have been such a blast. My former husband, the great Dick Stockton, he grew up listening to the Giants, and so was it October 2nd or October 3rd? October 3rd. Dick and I would have to go up to where the Polo Grounds used to be, and he would tell me the whole story. Willie Mays was on deck, Branca and Thompson. Giants
shot her around the world.
Well, you know what October 1st was famous for, right? The Red Sox season would end.
Whoa, another low blow.
I'll tell you, the Red Sox of my childhood were terrible.
Frank Malzone third.
Yeah, it was. And I loved Ike DeLock. No, our manager was Pinky Higgins.
Yes, what I just said, Pinky Higgins.
Oh yeah, it was ridiculous. And I loved Ike DeLock, a journeyman pitcher. I have no idea. But Ike DeLock, I think he must have waved at me once, in the bleachers or something.
Felix Mantilla, Dick Stewart.
Well, they did have Mambo Cat, and Pearsall.
Yeah.
That was okay. But no, they were terrible. And one time I think they only drew like 1,500 people for a game against Cleveland.
Wow.
They were terrible.
Wow.
I was at the Met game when Pearsall hit his 100th home run and he ran around the bases backwards. I'll never forget that.
There's another beauty, Jimmy Pearsall.
Jimmy Pearsall. Yeah, first strikes out.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Those great Knick teams, though, you were talking about before with Bradley on it. I used to go down to Garden all the time. It was electric. Marv Alpert, of course, was calling the game. And, the Busher and Reed and just Earl of Pearl, Clyde. That was chemistry. And Red had them playing ball, too. They had them playing like college teams. And you mentioned in your book about UF. Well, when Billy was coaching UF, I was at UF in those 2 years when they won the championships.
Billy Donovan?
Billy Donovan, yeah.
Billy Donovan. Oh, my God. I talked to him. I'm going to have to remember you to him. I first met Billy Donovan when Rick Pitino had him at Providence. And the only reason he had him was because Rick is, as you guys probably know, a horse gambler. And he would be at Saratoga. And Billy's dad was a big gambler at Saratoga. And so Billy was a nice little player from Long Island. And then he went up to Providence, and Rick Pitino totally embarrassed him. You're so fat, you're so useless. And so Billy, really got it together. And then Rick had him on the Knicks. And yeah, I think Billy Donovan's the most underrated college basketball coach in history. Back-to-back titles.
He did win back-to-back titles for sure. Well, what was he there? 12 years and he won 2 championships, or 10 years and he won 2 championships, and now he's doing a great job in the NBA. He's doing a great job.
He's got a great temperament, and
I think his dad might have been general manager of the Knicks at one time. I believe his whole.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I believe.
Wow.
Yeah, I think his dad was general manager of the Knicks at one time. His whole background is basketball. So Billy Donovan lived basketball.
You mentioned
They were. That's what. Remember Al McGuire? Al McGuire always said he just wanted gym rats. Like he didn't want guys who had grass in the backyard. He wanted guys that had cracked sidewalks in the front.
McGuire was an Irish legend out in Rockaway. I mean, they owned bars, and McGuires were like, they were a big deal. We used to call that Rockaway the Irish Riviera.
Yeah,
Tell me this. Tell me, Billy, I covered Al McGuire's teams, and then I got to work with him. He worked for a while at CBS. But tell me this. He said that at that bar, that if it got too quiet, that they would turn the heat up and start a fight just to get the action going.
It sounds like the Irish to me. You're not better than me, Lesley, but it sounds like an Irishman to me.
My favorite Al McGuire line was when he said, kamikaze pilots, I don't get it. Why do they wear helmets?
Pretty funny.
Yeah, great stuff.
Who are your favorite announcers? I mean, I'm lucky because for 67 years of my life, Vin Scully was all I heard for the Dodgers. What are your feelings on Vin Scully and other broadcasters that you've grown up with and worked with?
I have a million opinions on this. Like you with Vin Scully. By the way, how great is it when he says, "So pull up a chair"? He's just such a, Mount Rushmore. But I grew up with Kirk Gowdy, so there I was with my cheap transistor. I think what were they, Motorola's or Panasonics? What did we have? Our cheap transistors, and it was Kirk Gowdy. Hi neighbor, have a Gansett. The cowboy from Wyoming calling the Red Sox. So I really, I was trained on great announcers, and I wanted to be a sports writer. But when I got to TV, I've had the privilege. I think I've worked with quite a few of the greats. I've worked with Dick Enberg, and I did Monday Night Football, the World Series, and the Triple Crown with Al Michaels. And I've worked with Brent Musburger and James Brown and Greg Gumbel, and really all of them. So, and Dick, I even did games with Dick, quite a few football and baseball games. So I think if there's anybody Jim Nance is terrific. He makes it look so easy. Jim Nance on golf, I think, is the best there ever was.
He's brilliant. And
then
he can.
The two younger ones, Ian Eagle is a scream. You guys should try to get him on. He's a riot. His father remember the IBM commercials, Dominic the Fryer?
Okay.
The fat fryer?
I'm going to say yes.
Okay. Well, you did. You saw IBM machines.
Sure.
And a fat fryer would walk around it. And that's Ian Eagle's father. So he's funny. Ian's funny.
So you love sports and you love journalism. That was it. And you were lucky enough to combine the two for a tremendous, unbelievable career. But
yeah, thank you. Yeah, I have a natural curiosity. I really want to know, what athletes are saying or thinking. I love competition. I've always said that I think sports is the great meritocracy, because it doesn't matter where your mother went to college or how much money your father has. You sink the jumper, and you hit the jumper, you sink the putt. And that's what I love about it. People come from all different walks of life, and they're all together for something that's fun. I can't believe that I've been able to do this for 45 years.
Well, we hope you're going to be doing it for 45 more. That's for sure. But that sounds like a sign-off, but I'm not in the industry.
No. I'm not letting it get away that easy.
No.
Tell us about the commercial, the big commercial, the Super Bowl commercial with the Larry Bird and Michael Jordan.
Oh, that was, it was like an exhilarating but kind of terrible experience because, here's how it first happened. It was the Super Bowl in '95 down in Miami at, what was it called then? Joe Robbie Stadium. And so they called me from Leo Burnett. Probably, Frank, you know them, the big
advertising agency in Chicago, right?
Right, in Chicago. So they called me up and they said, Lesley, would you like to be in a Super Bowl commercial with Michael Jordan and Larry Bird for McDonald's? And I said, are you kidding? I'll pay you. So my agent said, well, that's nice. That cost you about $100,000. So they rented out, they had so much money, right? The McDonald's Corporation. They rented out the Orange Bowl, painted it to look like Joe Robbie, had all those fans in, they just sent out an open invitation. And it was, if people remember, it was when Larry and Michael played horse.
Right.
So their line was, let me see, Larry said, it was Larry's line. Okay, Michael, through the goalposts, around the bench, of Lesley Visser's head, cut, because he couldn't say my name. I mean, I'd known the guy for 20 years, right? And cut. And what they did was they bounced a basketball that was half Nerf and half real off my head every time I was standing on the sideline. And every time, so it would be, okay, Michael, through the goalposts, around the bench, Elizabeth's head, cut.
You should have worn your skateboard helmet.
God, yes. Yes. No, it was really an honor.
People still talk about that commercial. That was an amazing commercial.
I think it was one of the more popular,
without a doubt.
It just was, and they let me add lib a line, which is so Boston. You guys will get it. So it has the characters coming, not Michael and Larry, but these two guys who were trying to get tickets, and Michael gave them to them. And so they're walking, and they come through the team on the field, and then they come near me and cut right in front of me. And so they said, Lesley, just ad-lib something. So they walked past me, and I went, what was that? Which is like totally Boston humor.
You know, when I was a kid growing up in the 50s and 60s, I can remember vividly. Guys on the street would say to you, you know, sports, what are you doing? How'd the Giants do last night? Whatever. But they'd always say to you, what are you reading? What are you reading? And that question I never hear asked anymore from anybody young. And it blew me away when Dick Enberg asked you that.
He did. And now, I'll tell you, we know all the readers. Vin Scully, tremendous reader. You can ask that to Vin. He'll have a whole line of Greg Gumbel. And so if you ask me, I'm reading a book called The Warmth of Other Suns, which is about the Great Migration, the African-American migration from the South to Detroit, you know, of course, the music to Memphis, Detroit, and Chicago, and also out to Oakland. And I always, you know, sometimes now young people, you know, you'll ask them, and sometimes they look at you like you're accusing them of child molestation or something.
No, I never hear that question asked, and I see your library behind you, and I know that's not for ostentation. I know you said in your book, I read and I mean anything. I will read anything. And
obviously,
this isn't even
our two books.
By the way, this isn't even my bookcase. My bookcase is over there, but you know, you have to have the perfect backdrop for Zooms. But what I do have, and I'll put you guys in here, I have all my friends' books. I have Shaughnessy's books and Ryan's books and Chris Brennan and Amy Trask. And yeah, so I'm going to put yours because, you know, people look sometimes.
Yep. Well, you know, we talk about bars. You know, how, Billy, why don't you tell Lesley where you got the idea for Lamar's Gamble?
Oh, yeah, that's, I just came back from Nam. I was, I guess, 22 years old, and 2 years earlier was the upset, the big Jets upset over the Colts. And I had a buddy of mine who I went to school with, actually Art Donovan, Fatso Donovan, who wrote his book.
From Boston College.
Did he go to BC, really? Well,
yes.
High school and grammar school, he went in the Bronx. He went to St. Philip Neri High School, grammar school, and Mount St. Michael High School. And I think he went to the Seabees for a while, too. I think World War II, he was a Seabee. Pretty sure. But in either case, I went to school with his nephew. I went to grammar school with his nephew. When I came back from Nam, it was a Saturday morning. I get a call about 10:30 in the morning. He said, Billy, hey, you back from there? I'm back from overseas. He goes, hey, how'd you like to meet my Uncle Artie? I says, Art Donovan? Are you crazy? I said, sure, I'd like to meet Art Donovan. He was having a couple of beers up at the Idle Hour. He says, come on up. And it was about 6-block walk. And of course, I saddled my fastest horse, went up there, and I walk in at 10:30 in the morning. Maybe there's 3 guys in the place. And Art Donovan had his hand around. I know you don't go back as far as me. I know that. But they used to have these 7-ounce Pilsners. And they 15 cents was a 7-ounce Pilsner. And every 3 they'd buy you one. So for 45 cents, you could get 4 beers. And he had his hand around it, and it looked like a shot glass. You know, his hand was so big. And he was adamant, screaming on a rant. I'm telling you, that game was fixed. Rosenblum gave the Jets a playbook. No way they could have beat us. And they said, that's still sour grapes, you know. But I was still in the presence of Art Donovan at 11 o'clock in the morning in a saloon, and I was happy enough to be in a saloon no matter who was there. And them days especially. And then
I'll tell you, Art Donovan, how stupid was I? So when I got out of Boston College, and I was pretty involved at Boston College. By the way, you know how you can survive things in college? And Billy, I have to sit down with you and hear what it was like to go to college were you in your 50s?
Later.
60s when he graduated. 62 when he graduated.
It was great, Lesley.
It was great.
They say college is your best years, and you know they say that to all collegiate kids. Well, I can tell you at 61 and 62 graduating, those 4 years was some of the best 4 years I've had in my life. It was great.
Yeah.
Especially the journalism school. I mean, every kid was looking for a story.
Course.
Every kid came up to me. I had a fedora, the bookie hat. Asking me about this guy's got to be a story. What are you doing here? You know, so it was great. I had a ball.
God, you are a movie. But when I got out of Boston College, I was very involved in the school. My sports editor was Mike Lupica. Yes, I survived it. But yes, yeah. Mike Lupica was the sports editor. But you know, I was a cheerleader. I did the whole thing. And so when I was out of school writing for the Globe. I ran for some Boston College postgraduate office or something, and I ran against Artie Donovan. So, I mean, it was like 33,000 votes to 1. And he wasn't going to work hard. I was going to work hard. Artie Donovan was just going to come up, and tell stories.
Wow.
But yes, he's a legend.
Oh, yeah, and great on all the talk shows. Always has a tremendous amount of stories, Artie Donovan.
My two favorite Carson interviews were Don Rickles whenever he was on and Art Donovan whenever he was on.
That's he was
Well, I went to see Carson one time, and it was astonishing just how professional he was and how he just turned it on. The line went on forever. We were out in Burbank. Frankie must have been there a million times. And then, he'd stub his cigarette out, sort of look at Doc Severinsen, and then the light went on, and it was the best. Wasn't he the best ever?
He was the best ever.
I think a lot of people say that about you, Lesley. I think it can be said. A real pro. But I love the idea that you read anything, because I always heard and read that if you don't have time to read, you don't have time to write. You got to read. You got to read everything. You got to be voracious.
Well, there are a couple things about that. Thank you for that. One, the more you read, if you read anything, you'll have analogies or perspective. I mean, if you read about Japanese architecture or flowers in the Dominican Republic, it gives you something. And also, it was Hemingway who said the secret of writing is rewriting. So I don't know, you learn so much. Are you guys more Hemingway or Fitzgerald?
Definitely Hemingway. We like it
Hemingway.
Short and sweet. Subject, verb, object, gone. Subject, verb, object, gone. See you later. I mean, that was Hemingway. I mean, that was, again, that generation was before me. The Pete Hamill generation really worshipped Hemingway, They were about 10 years before my time. But I liked Hemingway. I loved Hemingway.
But Lesley,
I loved Hemingway.
Lesley, you said all writing is rewriting, but you grew up in the Boston Globe, and you had one shot. When you were writing on deadline, you wrote it, and then you called it in. You called it in. There was not a lot of rewriting done at the Boston Globe. Those guys and gals were so proficient at writing, they got it right the first time.
Thank you. Well, the Globe, everything. People say to me, didn't you used to be a writer? I say, no, a writer is the greatest thing I ever will be or have been.
Wow.
But we were a writer's paper. We always won the best sports section in the country. Sports Illustrated named the 10 years I was there, not because of me, but they named us the greatest sports section of all time. And that's because they were all Hall of Famers. It was Peter Gammons on baseball, Bob Ryan on basketball, Bud Collins on tennis, and Will McDonough on football. And I used to get to go to all those events with those guys. I was always like a second writer. And I remember at Wimbledon with Bud, I just used to go around and say, hi, I'm Lesley Visser from the Boston Globe. I work with Bud Collins. And it'd be, really grumpy people like Eon Tiriac saying, oh, what do you need? What do you need? Bud Collins. But back then, there were so few Americans, this is in the mid-'70s, covering Wimbledon, that they called us the Colonials, and we had to send our copy by Western Union. And Bud, Bud Collins was crazy, and Bud would try to get things in. Like one time, he said the teenage girls in the audience, when Bjorn was playing, Bud wrote, the teenage girls in the audience went into screaming borgasms. And Western Union wouldn't send it. So
that brings me to the Dorothy Parker quote. I thought I read every Dorothy Parker quote. I thought I knew them all. But you had the one about her breaking her arm, sliding down her barrister.
Wasn't it the greatest? Sliding down a barrister.
My favorite is, she said, whenever I go to a party, I only drink one or two. After three, I'm under the table. I one or two at the most. After three, I'm under the table. After four, I'm under the host.
By the way, Billy, you are so special. You have to memorize that because it is it's the greatest.
Oh, it's a great
quote. People say stand up and give a toast, and that's the greatest.
That's
and,
a great
whoever it is. Mike loves to have a martini. Or usually it's better for a girl. Okay. Linda loves to have a martini.
We hope to end up under the host. We'd be delighted. Yeah, that's she was something else. Yeah, Tallulah Bankhead was another one. She wasn't as glib as Dorothy Parker, but great stories from her. I've read a lot of quotes.
And Wasn't she on the Dodger games? Remember, she did a season.
Did she
Tallulah
really?
Bankhead.
Really?
I'm pretty sure.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure.
I'm going to tell you a Tallulah Bankhead story that's a little bit off color, but Chico Marx was infatuated with her. And he walked up to her one day and he said, "Boy, I'd like to screw you."
Right.
And she said, "And so you shall, my dear man, so you shall."
I love that.
Yeah,
it's like all those Churchill ones, right? Lady Astor to him, "Sir Churchill, you are drunk." And he said, "Lady Astor, in the morning I'll be sober and you'll still be unattractive."
They went out at Churchill and Lady Astor. She said, "Mr. Churchill, I don't like your mustache. And I don't like your politics." He says, "Madam, it's very unlikely you'll come in contact with either."
I've never heard that.
They went out.
No, you know, what happened to the art of repartee and badinage? Really, what happened to it?
Well, I don't know what badinage is, but I'm going to guess it's pretty.
Don't sound good.
Don't sound good.
I didn't know what a mook was either, according to Rabanero, but don't sound good.
No, it's just badinage. It's just another word for verbal play. Yeah. But tell me, Frank, who wrote Murphy Brown? Because that's was genius.
Diane English. Diane English. And I'll tell you, the pilot was written during a writer's strike. So she put a first draft on the table, and we usually have a battalion of writers punch it up. Nobody punched up that first episode. And we shot it, and it won 4 Emmys and was nominated for 7. One of the 3 we lost was for Best Comedy Show, which was my category, but that just set up along the line of losing Emmy awards for me.
Well, you were there,
when they revived it, did you work on that one?
I did. So 30 years later, 30 years after the pilot, Diane English calls me, and we had a conversation. I sent Diane a note of congratulations, and then she called me, and she said, "It's too bad we're shooting in New York." And I said, "Who said I won't go to New York?" After I talked to my wife, of course. I said, "Who said I won't go to New York?" And she said, "Peter Ross' office, who was the president of Warner Brothers TV at the time, will be in touch tomorrow." And I went off, and I had the greatest experience doing those 13 episodes. We went out to dinner one night in New York, and it was myself, Diane, Candace, and our costume designer, who was 78. I don't remember her name now, Patricia Norris. And I said to myself, "Look at this. I'm the youngest person in the group," because Diane was 70, Candace was 72, and Pat was 76 or so. But it was a great time. We shot at the Kaufman Astoria Studios in Queens, and every show night was a party. We had Bette Midler on, we had John Larroquette on, we had all of these people that were just coming to be with Candace, and the cast. Joe Regobudo.
Were some people asking their agent, "Can you get me on?" Like, was that the thing to do?
I'm sure Bette Midler doesn't have to ask anybody to be on, but a lot of people were probably lining up to get on that show.
How many people watched that Dan Quayle episode?
30. Well, it was. I think maybe 60 million.
60 million people.
Yeah, something like that. 60 million.
Those are Super Bowl numbers, there, Lesley.
Yeah, it is. That's the one thing, at least right now, about sports is, I'd love to hear what you guys are watching on Netflix and Amazon and Hulu, whatever. But sports still brings, you guys, I'm sure you just watched that Field of Dreams game. Did you see the ratings on that?
We talked about it for a little while before you came on. I guess they got a 5.9 rating, which was the highest rating of a baseball game in 16 years. The Hall of Fame game draw 7.2.
Yeah, it was just perfect, wasn't it? And I'm sure you've gotten to know. I'm privileged to have gotten to know Kevin Costner over the years, and I just thought it was magical. And he let the scenes speak. He didn't try to act like an actor at all. You'd see it, Frank, but was it pretty perfect?
It was pretty perfect. Even the game itself was
Amazing.
perfect.
Yeah.
The ninth inning, the Yankees score 4 runs to go ahead, and then Timmy Anderson hits the home run in the bottom of the ninth, walk off. I mean, it was perfect. It was amazing.
Yeah, the ending was like The Natural.
It was.
Yeah.
It was like The Natural. You talk about what are you watching on TV? What are you watching?
I went through most of them. I loved Homeland. I loved Billions. I can't get. I don't like to say the word the Schitt's Creek. I mean, what am I missing there? Is that great?
I thought it was great.
Really? I don't get that.
And I don't. I've never seen a full episode of Friends. I've never seen a full episode of Seinfeld because of Schwimmer and Costanza. Those two guys drive me crazy. But I like Schitt's Creek. I like Ted Lasso.
He's great.
I'm coming off Animal Kingdom now, which is a terrific show. So that's what.
Is that the one where the guy tortures the tigers?
No. That was not Animal Kingdom. Animal Kingdom's like The Sopranos of surfing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it stars Ellen Barkin as Tony Soprano. Ellen Barkin plays Tony Soprano, and her four sons are her gang.
I got to check that out. I just finished watching a remake of Joseph Heller's classic Catch-22, and George Clooney produced it. It's on Hulu, and I got to tell you, 6 episodes.
It's good?
It's better than the original movie, by far.
Who plays Milo Minderbender?
Yeah, right there.
You should play Milo Minderbender.
You know what? That guy was a real wheeler dealer. I mean, it was terrific. I thought that it was a great cast and really well done. I think it was better than the original movie. I really do.
Billy, I'd love to see you on camera. The way you talk now, I'm sure if we put you on screen at the moment they said action, I would get a hamana.
Can it open a can?
Yeah, but Jackie Gleason became one of the 5 greatest stars of all time from that. So don't you worry, Billy. You just say it.
You think it's too late? 73? I still got a shot? You think I can start my modeling career, Lesley?
No, you could have a romance with Betty White.
Well, Jackie Gleason was a great star, and what I love about The Honeymooners is that the show was set in one set. It was a show about a love affair between a man and a wife. Audrey Meadows. One room. Occasionally they would go up to the Nortons on the 2nd floor, but it was so story driven. It was story driven, not action driven. And that's, to me, what's wrong with some of the shows today is everything is about what's going on in the periphery, and it's not enough about story. But that's just me.
Yeah. Like, to me, the best movies of the last 10, 15 years were movies like Something's Gotta Give, or which is the one that Diane Keaton and Jack Nicholson, and she writes the...
yes, I know what you mean.
That's Something's Gotta Give?
Yeah.
Or is that the one with Helen Hunt and those 3, people you never put together, right? Greg Kinnear plays the gay guy who gets beat up, and Helen Hunt is just trying to make enough money to put food on the table, and Jack Nicholson has the ADD. What's that thing?
I don't remember the name of it, but I know what you're talking about.
I know the one too. Yeah, that's when
that was a great movie.
He's a real miserable son of a gun in it, and finally he looks at her one day and says, "You make me want to be a better person," which is probably the nicest thing he could ever say. Yeah.
And
I've been around coaches like that or people like they just make you sit up straighter. I guess not today.
Boston Catholic school training, sit up straighter.
Well, that's like Nick Saban's one of those people.
Nick Saban and Bill Belichick. Now, they're both so accomplished. But what do you think they talk about?
Well, they did a special on him. ESPN, I think, did a special on him. They did Belichick and Nick Saban, and they talked about their love of football, their love of the basics. I mean, I was surprising that Belichick was so outspoken on it. It was sort of like years before Madden, and I forget who was Madden's co-host, but they were.
Oh, Summerall, Madden and Summerall.
Yeah, they did a special on them too. But Yeah, I mean, you know who you could ask that question of Armin Katayan, our good friend who worked.
We love Armin, don't we?
Yeah.
And you did the book with him, right? Didn't you do a book with him?
I hired Armin when he was 27 years old, and he worked with me in San Diego advertising agency. I've known Armin for that year, that long, and we did Armin's first book was a racquetball book with Dave Peck, and Armin's second book was the Rod Carew hitting book that he and I did together in 85.
Do you know that I've had to just cover everything. I covered the National Racquetball Finals that were in La Jolla. And do you think you were there in like 77? And we got to stay at that Valencia, and it was, and I played racquetball myself. I used to play with Will McDonough, who would play with Red Auerbach all the time. And I thought Armin was a joy to work with. He's strong. He was an athlete. He's so smart. He's so well-spoken, and he could write great things. But I remember, who are we talking about? Not Madden and Summerall. Oh, Belichick and Nick Saban. Belichick, he let me do a story with him. Belichick's hero in life was Joe Bellino, of course, the Heisman Trophy winner from Naval Academy, which Steve Belichick, Bill's dad, coached for 28 years or something. So Bill said, okay, I'll do it. And so we did the story up in Foxborough, and Joe Bellino was there. And I had a whiteboard with me behind my chair, and I pulled it out and I said, Bill, could you diagram a play from Joe Bellino from back at the Naval Academy, which was when Bill Belichick was 6 years old? He wrote it down on the whiteboard in 5 seconds, 27 F-trap, touchdown, Joe Bellino. And he held it up like he was, like in grammar school, like, oh, I did this. It was astonishing. His brain in 10 seconds did that.
Yeah, it's funny how people have minds for certain things.
I can remember when I was a kid with Bellino, I think the thing was he had 18-inch calves or something. That was everybody talked about his calves, the size of his calves. But you have a quote in the book about Belichick that I found remarkable. I don't know if it's your quote or you were quoting somebody else, but you were talking about Belichick. You said, it's not that he doesn't care. It's that he doesn't care if you care, which I thought was a great quote. Is that yours?
I probably was quoting someone, but I can feel it because he was a prep school kid, right? I mean, after going to high school down in Annapolis, he went a year at Exeter or Andover. I think it was Andover. And his best friend was a naval expert on Navy and the military, Adams, who went to work with Bill for 40 years, just retired last year. And so Bill actually, he had preppy in him, and he belongs, to the most exclusive club out on Nantucket, and he rides his bike around. So, and you guys probably know this, he's a roadie for Bon Jovi in the summer.
Wow, I didn't know that. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
Wow. Imagine that. Bill Belichick's your roadie.
Yeah,
I know.
Can you imagine?
Unbelievable.
Can you imagine telling him to pick up those guitar cases and put them in the car?
Hey, kid, grab those lights. Wow.
See, and you also covered horse racing. You covered Triple Crown.
I loved it. Billy, I'm sure you've been to them, and it was a blast. And Al Michaels, everybody's a handicapper, and it was tremendous. And it was a lot of the Triple Crown during the Triple Crown. Well, some contenders, Silver Charm, but it was real quiet. It was Silver Charm, charismatic, came within a nose of winning. So it was really fun. And I actually named a horse that got to the Derby, which is pretty unusual. I think there are 20,000 foals born every year, and 2018 get to the Kentucky Derby. And do you guys remember the book Lonesome Dove?
Sure.
Great movie.
Robert Duvall.
Great movie.
Yes, Robert Duvall. And in the
movie.
TV series.
Yeah.
But it was, what was his name? Larry McMurtry. Did he write it?
Yep. Yes, he did.
So anyway, I was good friends with Wayne Lucas, the trainer, and he always had a million foals or babies being born. And he said, give me some names. So I sort of imagined these names out of Lonesome Dove, and I said to him, "What about the name Border Run?" And he took it, and that horse ran in the Kentucky Derby in like '94, maybe.
Wow!
Another feather.
Do you still have your bonnet?
I have all the Derby hats. I had a great experience with that. let's see, I've had two great experiences. One was the first derby I did for ABC. I ran into Phyllis George, the great Phyllis George, who I followed on the NFL Today. And Phyllis said to me, maybe you guys met her, she was just what you think, beautiful, charming, Southern, smart. And she looked at me and she said, "Oh, darling, that hat of yours." I had on something Billy would wear, some fedora thing, What do I know? And Phyllis said to me, "You cannot wear that on network television." And she made me switch with her hat.
That's a
how
great
cool
story.
she
One of
was.
the most hilarious features I ever read was Hunter Thompson at the Kentucky Derby. That's an amazing piece. Hilarious.
Well, you talk about things that go around. Phyllis George, in addition to being the NFL host, her husband and she also owned Artis Gilmore's Kentucky Colonels.
Yes, and then he came to the Boston Celtics, which was very unfortunate because Phyllis had a crush on some player, and John Y, to impress her, no, it wasn't Lanier. It was somebody that she just loved and didn't work out at all. And I think he only owned the team for a year. I think it was like a disaster. But Phyllis was. Hey, was Jimmy O'Brien on that team?
I think he was.
The Kentucky Colonels?
I think he was.
I believe he was.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, and maybe Billy Evans. I don't know if he was. But
and Artis used to babysit for the general manager of the Colonel's daughter, Hannah Storm.
Wow.
Right. Storin. Right. She's great too, by the way.
She is terrific.
You know how you guys find out you can tell the women that are the real deal? And Hannah's one, Michelle Tafoya. We have one, Tracy Wolfson at CBS. And you guys should get on sometime because she's a blast, is Susan Waldman. Now she can tell stories.
I'm sure she can. Yankee stories for sure.
She was an actress before that. She was in the original Man of La Mancha on Broadway, and she performed in the West End. She dated Cary Grant. Come on.
That's saying something. I would date Cary Grant if I had a shot.
Me too.
Well, last week's show we had on Rob Nelson, who was the pitcher who invented Big League Chew with Jim Bouton, and Bouton financed his venture into Big League Chew. So we are meeting some amazing people in this podcast. Lesley, you've been delightful. We've taken up enough of your time because we could go on for almost as long as Upton went on. But
no, it's been a privilege. As I told you, Frank and Billy, when Upton said to me, he sent me the show, which was great, and he said, "You ought to meet these guys." I said, "Upton, I've been listening to them for months. So thank you for finding me."
Such a compliment.
And you and I had worked together 15 years ago on Hall of Fame magazine. So I'm delighted to remake your acquaintance for sure. Derek, do you have any final questions? Billy, do you have any final questions?
Yeah, I got a couple questions. Well, one question for sure is, so you mentioned that you read a lot. And what's your top 3 books for either women or women in journalism? My daughter just graduated from, in journalism. And I'm curious about it. Yeah, I'm curious about it.
I wouldn't read books, how-to books. Okay. I would read, they talked about read Hemingway, read writers like The Athletic, get a subscription to The Athletic, and see, you need 3, I think there are 3 non-negotiables to make it in sports, either journalism or on camera. You have to have passion. If you don't have passion, then it'll leak out. You'll be mad that somebody else makes more money, or you won't like the assignment. So you have to have passion. You have to have knowledge. Knowledge is unassailable. And I think you have to have stamina. I mean, all of us here on this podcast right now, we've all had ups and downs, and we've all gotten back up. So I think if you have those 3 elements, she'll make it.
Awesome.
That's just great advice.
And then I got one more question. So you're super sharp, and obviously a lot of it has to do with reading and working. What's your regimen? So you look great as well. So do you have a sort of a morning regimen? Do you work out? What's your diet?
Wow.
Like?
Thanks. No, I would say yes. I've worked out my whole life. I have 3 hip replacements to show for it. I was a runner that, running was great because you could do it wherever. You could go out the door, at a hotel in New Orleans and run up to Audubon Park. I covered events in Sweden and Switzerland and Russia. So you could just go out the door, with a headset on, those old Sony headsets, and run. But I think it really helped me. I always played pickup basketball with either the guys from the Globe or the Patriots. And you guys remember Russ Francis, 6'6", pretty boy, right?
Of course.
And I would have to rebound because Russ didn't want his pretty nose elbowed. So I said, Lesley, you get in there. So, and by the way, one time, Frank, you'll appreciate this. One time, Russ Francis and Abe Gibran and I went fishing before the game in Tampa Bay. It was a lot more relaxed back then. We actually flew with the team. But
Abe was a beauty. Abe was a beauty. And Russ Francis, he didn't want to get his nose broken, later became a professional wrestler.
Oh,
yes. Yes. I might remind him of that. But thank you, Derek. I have terrible paranoia, because because I was always the only woman in the beginning. That's what everyone would say. Oh, what's with her hair? What's with her hair? So, but actually one time I was doing skating in St. Petersburg, Russia. It was in the winter. And Peggy Fleming, I did it with the great Dick Button and Peggy Fleming. And Peggy said, Lesley, you got to come down to breakfast, you really have to come right now. And I went down, I said, Peggy, what's wrong? Is your family okay? Are your kids okay? And she said, there's a website about your hair. So thank you, Derek, for saying I look okay.
That's awesome.
Billy, any closing thoughts?
No, but I want to thank you for having us, for meeting you. It's been a pleasure. The stories have been amazing. You're amazing. Your book is great. And like your husband says, one more Pioneer Award for Lesley, and she'd have to wear a coonskin cap.
I know. I'll wear it on the next show.
You certainly broke a lot of glass ceilings, so it's a real pleasure.
Thank you.
An honor.
Thank you, Lesley.
Thank you, guys.
Very good having you. You're a terrific lady and a great interview. Thank you so much.
Thanks
Goodbye.
so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye. So, another great interview.
Yeah, she was amazing. She just, between the sports knowledge she has and the journalism knowledge she has, meeting writers like that, I mean, just great stuff, great stuff.
It's terrific. So, this week in history. What do you think happened this week in history?
I don't even know what date it is. Give me a clue.
In 1945. You want a visual cue, Derek?
Oh, give me a visual. Yeah, give me a visual. Oh, well, that's easy. That's MacArthur. That's getting the surrender from the Japanese aboard the Missouri. Matter of fact, Wainwright should be somewhere in that picture. He is. You can barely see him over Hirohito's left shoulder. You see that skinny guy back there? That's Wainwright after his release from the Philippines. MacArthur wanted to be certain.
Who's Wainwright?
General Wainwright was when MacArthur left Bataan. The Japanese were taking over Bataan. MacArthur got out of there, because they thought he was too important to the war effort to lose to the Japanese. So they shot him out in a PT boat in the middle of the night. But Wainwright took command of Bataan, and he ended up spending almost 3.5 years in a Japanese prison camp, where he was, predictably, as he was so skinny when he came out of there, he could have closed one eye and went to a masquerade party as a needle. I mean, I don't want to make fun of it, but it was that's the situation he was in. And MacArthur insisted that he be on the Missouri when the Japanese capitulated. MacArthur had an uncanny, there's a great book about MacArthur called American Caesar, written by William Manchester. And he said he had an uncanny accuracy when it came to predicting the amount of casualties. And he said a land invasion of Japan he estimated would lose 1 million American soldiers.
Wow.
That's why they dropped the bomb.
My brother was named after Douglas MacArthur. My brother Doug.
Really?
Yeah. Well, my father was in the war, so he named my 2 brothers, my brother Bruce after his General Bruce, who later became the president of the University of Houston, and Douglas MacArthur.
Wow, that's quite an honor. I always love MacArthur. I mean, there's in Manchester's book, American Caesar, he said that the 3 of the most influential people in the Western effort, of course, were MacArthur, Churchill, and FDR. And they were all distant cousins.
Wow.
And they all had domineering mothers. That was another thing that was kind of odd. Like when he went to West Point, MacArthur, and again, MacArthur graduated West Point with a 98.6 average, which I think was the second highest in the history of West Point. The only one who had a higher mark was Robert E. Lee.
Right. And somebody graduated at the bottom of the class. Wasn't somebody, was Eisenhower at the bottom of his class?
Eisenhower was near the bottom of his class.
So,
Of
like
course,
second-
Grant almost got thrown out.
Yeah. Well,
I mean,
you know what Grant's problem was?
It's a small fault of a good man, Frank. A small fault. He liked a few in the morning, just to even him off a bit.
So, before we close, I want to mention Combustible. It's now our third book.
Third book, collaborated book. That's
loosely based on the life of
a screwball. Some
some screwball.
Man unnamed.
Somebody named Billy O'Connor. It's loosely based on his life. It culminates at 9/11, which we are coming up on, and we're going to commemorate that. But we thought it would be good. We had to work against the clock, but to get this book out now, because it's an important period in our life, and it's the 20-year anniversary of
20th
9/11.
anniversary of 9/11, and it's hard to believe it's been 20 years. I mean, tempest fugit. You always say time flies, but 20 years really since 9/11. I mean, what a tragic day.
Yeah,
and we'll talk about that when we
With
have Richie Picciano.
Richie Picciano will be on the show.
Richie wrote a great book called Last Man Down.
Yep.
About he was one of the survivors actually of 9/11.
So you talk about reading. Since we've been doing this, I've been reading more than ever because I'm reading Tony O's book because Tony O's going to be on again. I'm reading,
That's Sinatra's Road Manager, by the way.
Sinatra's Road Manager will be on. He wrote a great book called In the Wee Small Hours of the Morning, Sinatra and Me. I'm reading Lesley's book. I'm reading, a lot of books.
A lot of homework, Frank.
A lot of homework.
You can't take it for granted.
And I hope somebody finds it in their graciousness to read If These Lips Could Talk, Lamar's Gamble, and our latest book, Combustible.
And Tony O was such a great interview the first time he was here.
Yeah, and he's going to have a lot more to talk about since
he's got the book out. Some pretty
he's
explosive stuff in that book.
I'm reading it right now.
Yeah, pretty explosive stuff.
Before we go, I want to again mention Weekend Coffee, our sponsor. They do a great job. Derek's got the logo up right now. You go to weekendcoffeecompany.com. They will donate one bag of coffee.
Every 10 for first responders and veterans. So they're a good cause. They're good coffee.
And it's good coffee. And they deliver it right to your door.
Right to your door. And then you take it and put it into a cup and deliver it right to your mouth. That's on you. They can't do everything. But thanks for looking in this week. I hope you enjoyed Lesley Visser. I had a ball. I hope that our audience had just as much fun as we did. What an interesting woman.
Yep. A terrific woman. Yeah. Another terrific woman because we had Wendy Selig-Prieb on.
That's correct.
A couple of weeks prior. So
with that, good, Frank. I'm meeting some great people. Thank you for the privilege.
Say good night, Billy.
Good night, Billy.
Good night, Derek.
Good night, fellas.
Good night, Jenny. Wherever you are.
Next week's guest, nationally known mixed martial arts writer, Grant Gordon.